Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Paranormal Karen, funny too. Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Oh, and did I mention she's funny too? Yeah, cha-cha-cha.
Hey, everybody, welcome to Paranormal Karen. We are in March. You are in March. I am not in March yet. I should be at my location in Utica where I moved to for a few months before I go to Nashville. All unnecessary information. Welcome to the show. As usual, you have my Patreon /Rontowski if you want to learn tarot and do psychic development. And you can book a reading at KarenRontowski.com. And hopefully I have my comedy calendar up there if I have myself together. So excited about my guest today. Alex Glynn. Alex and I met, and I think, Alex, where we're going, first of all, her website is embracingwild.com, which is fantastic name. And you'll see her, she does all kind of healing and stuff she's going to talk to us about. But Alex, first of all, thanks for coming on the show. How are you?
Great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Well, you and I got into a talk about shadow work, and I was like, can you do a whole podcast on that? And you were like, oh yeah. And I think, I think shadow work is right now the biggest thing. And this is my theory. And then I'm going to shut up, folks, and let my guests talk. I think that 2022 is about two things. It's about the nervous system. I keep hearing that over and over. We're all trying to move out of fight or flight into just being a person. And the second thing is identity crisis. And I keep telling people it's not that on the level, who am I? What am I doing here? It's that deeper level. Am I a control freak? Am I a perfectionist? Am I a victim, a professional victim? All of that, which I think goes into shadow work, and I can't wait to learn about it. How did you first discover, or what was your journey into like really doing the deep dive into shadow work? How did that start?
Well, I love the dark. So how could I really teach anyone about their shadow if I didn't love the dark myself, you know? I think most of my transformational milestones have been wrapped up in shadow work. So just on a personal level, it makes a lot of sense to me. The way that I pull down change for myself has historically been really abrupt and significant and usually has a touch of chaos. So I found that when you're willing to integrate your shadow, you can transform and manifest more quickly because you don't limit the ways that you're willing to grow. So I think this work makes a lot of sense to me in that regard. And I think, we're living a human experience. We are on a planet that is in continual stages of change. We have seasons, day and night are constantly shifting into each other. And I think that we should too.
And you know what else too? I have this joke in my act where I say I'm working on my shadow side. That's where you take all your shame and rage and shove it down and save it for Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
The part about shadow work, and this is the interesting part, is I think it's also that most heavily put behind denial, or projection. I still think some people don't know their shadow.
I totally agree. I think part of the first part of shadow work, I think, is even acknowledging that you have an inner darkness or a shadow self, because I think sometimes we fear the fact that our own darkness even exists, because if, God forbid, something bad is within me, that might mean I'm bad. So I would say that first step is all about even just learning to sit in your own darkness and not run for it or be consumed by it. So I totally agree. I think there's it's a practice to even acknowledge that it's there, because I agree with you. It's something that is a bit hidden and you have to intentionally search for it, or it rears its ugly head really loudly and forces you to look at it,
Yes. And a lot of people and perfectionists, I think everybody's kind of a perfectionist in a way. And I think a perfectionist puts so much pressure on themselves to be perfect that I almost think it might be a harder thing for them. Now, as a comedian, you should not only know your shadow side, but you should be able to put it out there. You should be able to say, this is where I screw up all the time. But it's interesting because it's mostly with me, I feel ego and pride. I feel those two things are like my mortal enemies, especially ego.
I think being a comedian and exploring shadow is so interesting because what we're talking about is it's almost like hard to, when you're dealing with that perfectionism or that ego, access shadow. But when you can laugh or you can add some sense of like levity and lightness to looking at shadow, then it's a little bit easier to observe without identifying with parts of your shadow or making assumptions about what you deserve or what you find there is somehow going to dictate like who you are or invalidate you. You know what I mean? I think we add a lot of value judgments to the fact that the shadow exists at all. So I think if we all could take a collective inhale and exhale and go, I've got a shadow, I am a hero and a villain all at once, and that lives within me. I think it's a lot easier to just look at it and go, I'm not bad. I'm not the only one. This doesn't take away the value that I bring to my person, you know?
Well, you just said about 10 brilliant things, and I think I wrote down one. But the first thing that you said, and then I always use this example of, okay, so I'm all over the place, but I already love where we're going. So you said the assumption of what happens to me. Like if I admit, let's take, what's a good one? I want to think of a good one for me. I want to say jealousy, although that's not like my major one yet. So when I say I'm jealous, then there's a couple of things. First of all, everyone will correct you when you say you're jealous, and they'll say, no, say you're envious or change that word. They don't even like it if you call it on yourself. But then I think, well, if I say I'm jealous, then I assume I'm going to get tagged as crazy ex-girlfriend, or that's a really interesting phrase you use, that assuming what will happen if we admit this. Can you expand on that, or is that?
Yeah. No, yeah, I totally agree with you. I think we have these good, bad value judgments around, I think, emotions or like states of being that really limit us or like cause a lot of fear and anxiety when it comes to looking at these parts of ourself that exist in shadow. So even just breaking down jealousy is just acknowledging that you have a desire for something that someone else has, or it's almost like jealousy. I always say like these quote unquote bad emotions or whatever that is gets a bad rap, but really all emotions, good or bad, light or dark, are just signaling us to something that's happening internally or externally. And so I would just go, I'm experiencing jealousy. I'm looking at something and I'm wondering, why don't I have that? Why does someone else have that? Why is this difficult for me? And I'm going, well, what if we just answered those questions?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. And so you're also saying I'm experiencing instead of I am.
Absolutely. I think that's probably one of the biggest parts about this is the shadow. I mean, we can break this down and it gets real deep, but like one of the things that I say is what we don't either integrate or heal and learn to release and kind of freely flow between light and dark, we will either identify with or pull it into what I call like our security system. So the ways that we feel safe and stable. So if we have a part of our shadow that we're afraid to look at, my encouragement to clients would be, well, let's observe what purpose it's serving for you. So if I can go, I'm not bad because I'm jealous. When I experience jealousy, I can acknowledge that maybe there's something that I want that I don't yet have, instead of being like, I'm a jealous person, I'm a, a piece of shit because I haven't somehow integrated or don't have some level of enlightenment. We just objectively look at it and going, what is it that you're trying to teach me? Pretend like you don't speak the language. What are you trying to say to me?
That's interesting because I did hear somebody on, I think it was on TikTok, that said, I dig the TikTok right now. And that person said, jealousy is good because it shows you what you should be doing or what you should be focusing on. But it is interesting. And you said you pull it into your security system. What does that mean?
Yeah. So one of the things that I found when working with clients is that sometimes there are parts of, and I think this works for shadow, or what we would call maybe like light. So I think whether it's anger or guilt or stress or anxiety or something like joy and like happiness and like those things that maybe we've elevated as good over bad, whatever it is that we like get stuck holding on to, we kind of, it needs a place to settle. And a lot of times I find that it settles in the ways that we keep ourselves safe. So let's say, let's just take anger, something that typically I think in our culture, we are like not
that
supposed
I have
to
a
feel,
lot of. I have a lot of,
we're
yes.
supposed to. Yeah, it exists, but we're supposed to pretend that we're not angry or we're better if we don't get angry, or some silly concept that anger is necessarily wrong. But if I use anger as a part of my security system, essentially what I'm doing is I use anger to protect myself. So rather than being like anger is an emotion that likes to have an outward expression. So it allows us to see things like where we've been violated, where we're experiencing less than what we want. Anger kind of like clouds our judgment and asks us to honestly feel our way through an experience. But if we can determine the cause of our anger, then we also determine what imbalance it's trying to draw our attention to. So kind of, if we don't know how to deal with people violating our space, if we don't know how to deal with lack and when it shows up in our life, anger protests, and anger acts as like that kind of gatekeeper to those places. And so what
it makes us, I feel like there are certain people, and I see it in other people, which means it's probably in me. Anger can make us feel justified.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's where we get into this trouble area, where when we're holding on to these parts of shadow and we don't learn to just observe and move through them, we do. We limit ourselves, and we kind of can only see our own perspective, and things get really one-sided really fast.
That is exactly one-sided, really fast. This is a funny offshoot, but I keep having this conversation with my friend about that there's no customer service anymore, and I had an anger burst with a vet, which that is I know, like, if I can't keep my little dog safe, thank God I don't have children. If I can't keep my dog safe, it's like that. I know that I'm capable of anything, because if anybody hurt my dog or does a disservice to my dog, I lose it. And I did lose it with a vet, and it did become very one-sided, that argument. But also, my friend was saying, well, clearly the vet was wrong, but there is no customer service. There was no one to come out and diffuse that. No one came out, and yet good customer service, or I don't know if this is good or fake, when you call Apple and you say, hey, this isn't working, they have lines that they're supposed to say. Verizon does this too. Oh my God, that's such a pain. Oh my God, that's awful.
Yeah,
or
so sorry.
Right. What a great question. And as much as I hear it's rehearsed, I go, okay, that still put me in a better mood than anger up against anger. So when someone diffuses that, it does feel better. I don't know. Maybe that last comment was my shadow making me feel better.
No, I totally agree with you, because I think when we're talking about, the situation with the vet, you're feeling violated on behalf of your pet, and they're feeling violated on behalf of you, questioning their expertise and whatever goes into that. And so again, I always say, like, there are certain emotions that cause us to, like, some require outward expression, some require inward, and anger is one of those things that kind of, you puff your chest up. There are like actual like body mannerisms that go along with being angry that kind of is letting another person know, hey, something's been violated here. And when we use that also as like internal signaling for ourselves, going, something's been violated here. Is there anything that I can do outside of anger? Because anger's pulled my attention to this, but can I then respond to the actual threat with something other than anger? Do you know what I mean? It's just a signal.
I think you answered my question, that anger is my security system, that something has gone wrong, get angry. That's what my dad taught me. Something has gone wrong, get angry. And I actually really have learned, even this week with my mechanics having my car, I was like, yeah, that's fine. We'll work around it. And I was like, you know what? Did you hear yourself, Karen? It's not going perfect. And you were like, let's work around it, or we'll work it out. And then the guy literally gave me a discount on the parts because I was like so easy to work with, which I kind of wanted to go, you got a good day from me, buddy. When, very interesting. We're almost to the break, but I want to, there's two things I just want to put in here, because I think maybe it's not better that one way or the other, but I do feel like, especially when I run into a perfectionist when I'm reading tarot for them, is it's so funny how many, especially women, were pushed to be perfect, and yet no one likes a perfect person. No one, right? And even in TV and movies, the flawed character is the one we love.
Absolutely. I mean, I think there's nothing about a perfect person that reflects back something to us that we can relate to, because we're all, like, very hyper aware of our flaws. And so there's not something that we can go, I see myself in that. It's just, it's unattainable. You know what I mean? Right.
And it's definitely connected to, and this is a perfect place to jump off and come back. I think it's attached to vulnerability.
Oh, yeah. And I think perfectionism really runs in that stream of trying to minimize the amount of pain or discomfort that you are going to experience. So if I'm perfect, potentially things won't come to get me. And again, that gets into your security system. And when you can't, when you can't be that perfect version of yourself, there's this fear and anxiety that rises up, going, oh my gosh, but now where the threat's going to come from? I'm not keeping myself safe by being without fault. You know what I mean?
I do. And you know what's really interesting, because I'm just going to throw a little paranormal scoop in here, is, a poltergeist is literally energy coming off of someone that is unhandled. And if you think about that, that's how much energy a person has, that they can actually cause things to fly around the room from an unattended to gift, emotion, whatever you want to call it.
Which I agree wholeheartedly. And I think that is a perfect point to say, this is why shadow work is so necessary and so helpful, because what we heal for ourselves, I know we hear the phrase all the time, we heal for the collective, and what we integrate in our shadow and what we give back to people that belong to them, they then get to do something with it. And so I agree with you that when we talk about really the power that we have within ourselves, when we heal shadow, we shift things energetically, not just for us, but the people around us and our environment and so on. That ripple effect is huge.
Wow. Okay. I love this. This is brilliant. Hang on, folks. When we come back for the break, two things I want to talk about is passive aggressive and vulnerability. We'll be right back with Alex Glynn. Glynn. Did I say it right? Glynn.
Glynn, yeah.
Yay! Okay, we'll be right back, folks.
Hey everybody, just want to let you know my tarot class is on sale this weekend only until the 23rd, or the 23rd. I believe it runs out at midnight. So that'll be 2 days. You can get half off when you go to KarenRontowski.com and click on tarot, and then you're going to use the coupon code October, all capital letters October. Also, November 1st, I finally have a Patreon. I know I'm so far behind everyone else. It is a tarot and psychic development. So it's going to be some paranormal, but mostly tarot and psychic development. I'm going to be putting up classes myself that are tarot classes, and we're going to be doing meditations and psychic exercises, and there's going to be homework and all kinds of fun stuff. I'm also going to have guests come on and tell us about their process, how they do their thing. So November 1st, the first class will be out. November 4th, patreon.com/Rontowski.
Okay, so I will tell you one of my shadow things, which is passive aggressive, and this is my evolution with it, and I don't know this ever goes away, which obviously I had this father that was kind of a rageaholic, and the only way my mom had power, and this is a lot of females that were born in the 50s or 40s, 50s, 30s. I guess my mom was born in the 30s. We forget that women didn't even have the right to vote when some of us, when our mothers were born, and their dealing with anything was that withholding sex or passive aggressive. And my mother was so very passive aggressive that's what I learned. Don't tell someone they hurt your feelings. Make them feel as bad as you do. And after I finally identified that, I feel that come up sometimes. And I go, okay, I have to stop myself and say, all right, what do you really want here? What do you not? What are you twisting around? What do you really want, or what makes this better? We are still a very passive aggressive society, aren't we?
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's funny to me because when you look at aggression, there's nothing passive about it. You know what I mean? So the idea of passive aggression is really just a
mask.
It's chopping aggression up into smaller bite-sized pieces so that it seems more palatable a bit. Like, I mean, if you're experiencing aggression and we're acting out of passive aggression, we're literally kind of like using the exact opposite of what part of your shadow is to try to like minimize it. And in that way, I think aggression has to get louder and bigger and make you more uncomfortable so that it can actually be addressed. You know what I mean? It's going to build. Passive aggression is like a poor way to handle just aggression.
Yes, and it's a manipulation, I feel like.
Oh, yeah. And you said something that was so interesting just in terms of watching a parent model something for you and then kind of inheriting yourself. I think in shadow work, we really can address those inherited ancestral woundings or patterns. But we also get a chance to like address things like negative entity attachments and energetic ties to situations and like people that aren't serving us, internal stories and programming that need to be healed. There's a whole host of things that gets addressed just by the nature of doing shadow work. So I like the idea of getting to have a bit of autonomy when it comes to how we handle like our trauma or things that make us uncomfortable, that we've maybe seen parents do one thing and we kind of get to go, oh, wait, I don't have to do it this way.
Yes. And you just said something interesting, which is kind of the tie-in, which is negative entity and attachment. For this situation, that's interesting because you actually kind of opened my eyes to something here, because a lot of times, I mean, I'm sure it is connected to holes in the aura or portals or sometimes drugs or alcohol. But a negative entity really does go right for your shadow side and attach to an emotion or a behavior there, doesn't it?
Oh, definitely. And I think I kind of come from a funny spot I love your guest Diet that you had on.
Oh yeah.
The episode when she channeled during the episode, it was just fantastic. And I think the way that I see negative entities is similar to what I've heard you talk about on the podcast, or these kind of low level ones that are really chaotic and problematic and really just have nothing to do but cause problems. And then there's some of these heavier entities that I come across sometimes that I would call the listen, here's what I say. The shadow has no qualms with teaching you through pain and discomfort. And I think negative entities, those like higher level ones, are similar in the sense that I'm not saying go find yourself one and cozy up and,
No,
and
right.
let them teach you all the way. But because the truth is they do teach through pain and discomfort and dis-ease and things like that. And so a lot of the times when I come across something like that, when I'm doing this like energetic work, if we just acknowledge what it's attached to and what purpose it serves, and we give it gratitude. So we release, anytime we do any of this work and we want to release an old storyline or something that we've been holding on to for too long, we always do it with gratitude. So we thank anger for the space that it held for us. When I come across one of those negative entities, I go, oh, look at this. You're attached to shame. So we thank shame for coming up in such a way that it allowed us this look backwards into the past about things that are still causing us hurt. And we go, thank you. I needed that. There were areas that were unhealed. And we start flooding that like attachment site with gratitude. And eventually that entity lets go and goes, cool, did what I was here to do. And it no longer resonates with that frequency because you're not existing in shame the same as you were. And it also honestly it's a gift to be taught how to deal with shadow because it doesn't control you anymore.
That's phenomenal. Now, I also have, we're on dark entity theory for a little bit because this is how we hit it off with the darkness. I could not agree more. I also think there's I kind of want to say sometimes we talk about attachment as very, possession and all that stuff. That's a whole nother level. But I think that we all have a lot more. Here's the thing. It's like at level 1, that's the crazy level, which would be possession or something that most of us will never see. Hopefully, whatever, goodbye. Then there's level 2, which I feel, and I'm making these levels up as I go, but just for an example, level 2 would be, you really do, something gets attached to your shame or something like that, just like you were just saying. And now I think we're starting to uncover level 3, which we can all walk around and think we don't have any attachments or work on protection all day. But I think level 3 is something that is just coming into, it's part of this awakening right now. And it's a level we didn't see before. I could be full of banana crap. But what I feel like is, it's like for those of us that thought we weren't walking around with attachments, there's another layer. And under that, there's another layer. And it's not that these are negative things. It's that some of them are just there. Some of them are ancestral. Some of them with the veil getting thinner, we can see more that we didn't know were there. Does that make any sense?
Oh, yeah. I mean, tell me if I'm headed in the right direction with what you're saying. I think sometimes what I come across is negative attachments don't even have to be to like what we would imagine, like these dark entities. Like I come across negative attachments that are, between parent and child or ex, like romantic partners or things like that. And a lot of the times when you talk about like this new level of like being awake and things like that, codependency kind of crumbled as like a structural system in the last few years. And I think we are all of a sudden really aware of these negative attachments we have not only to entities, but to each other.
Yes.
And they're realizing we don't want to like partake in someone else's healing. And so when I go, oh, I don't want to be your sense of security because you are have high anxiety or you don't follow your dream. I want to be the person that's living out my dreams on your behalf. I'm going to give this back to you, Mom, like with gratitude and love. Like, I want you to be able to feel in your own time. I don't want to be a part of it. So I'm not sure if maybe you're talking about that level or even like entities, but I think negative attachments come in all forms.
Yes, exactly. Your phone was going in and out just for a second there. But yes, in other words, an attachment is not always a big, ugly thing that sits on you. Sometimes it's a subtle thing that, and everybody has them. No one, I think maybe a yogi that has, maybe the yogi's doesn't have it. But, right?
Or they have it and they just aren't afraid to admit it, right?
Right. They don't give it power by hiding it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect. The word, my least favorite word is vulnerability. And I'm not good at it. And that's why I'm not a good actress. Is that like, what am I, if I say, because that's the other thing with perfectionism is I will not be vulnerable. There will be no kinks in the armor, so no one can get at me. So I guess I'm a perfectionist too. See, I just learned something. I was blaming that like the other perfectionist, but that's me. That is that. I don't know. I don't even know what I'm asking. Well, go ahead.
I was going to say, so I love your podcast and I listen to you regularly, and I've heard you talk every so often about control for you. And I think when we're talking about vulnerability, it is like, so it kind of depends where vulnerability sits, where it's been the like fear around it has been integrated. So I think, is it okay if we like dissect control a little bit on behalf of vulnerability?
Yes, I need that too. Go ahead.
Okay. So I think like when I look at that for you, it kind of feels like the two are tied a little bit together, where control kind of comes out in two different ways, where it's like this fear of losing and then a need to control like others or like situations. And that's it. Again, it gets integrated into that security system of going,
everybody's all over the place. If I don't control this, it's going to be chaos.
Yeah. And one of the things that comes for it is like, there's a requirement for like balance and flexibility. So I know that if something, knocks me over, I'll get up and I'll sort it out. Or I know that I can change. I know that I can bend. But to do those things, it requires a level of vulnerability that I would say you have to know what it is that you're looking for and what you want to do. And you have to know how to address your needs and express them and take care of them. And so when we're talking about vulnerability, I would then say, what sits in front of your vulnerability? What are the ways that you protect yourself from being vulnerable? And if you can maybe see how you're protecting it, that kind of allows you that door into what is it that I'm even protecting? You know what I mean? You kind of follow that trail backwards.
Right. Interesting. Let me see if I could hit it right now off the bat. I'm going to connect it to love, because I think most people will be able to, because here's the thing. This is perfect vulnerability. You have a fight. I don't know if you can hear this. The Matrix is acting up now. The ice cream truck is going by and it's stopping in front of my house for hours. And I was like, I don't know if you guys can hear the ice cream truck, but I feel like whenever I get to that level, the Matrix starts to throw all kinds of things at the podcast. So perfect. You're a jerk. You have a fight with your boyfriend or girlfriend. And I hear it when sometimes people will call me and tell me how bad the ex is. And I'm looking at the cards and I'm going, okay, I have to bring a little perspective in this. This is a two-way street. Right?
Absolutely.
And if we were okay being vulnerable, like we would be okay saying, hey, listen, that I got really upset. I was jealous, say, and then I turned it into getting mad and I started the fight and I'm sorry. And I just think you're great. And it kind of scares me.
Oh yeah. I like when you say that, it's like, oh man, the fear of rejection
Yes.
that comes behind that is so this inability to know how a person's going to receive what you're going to say and what they'll give back to you, and this fear of getting less than what it is that you're looking for. And so if I can just, again, minimize that potential harm or that threat by
hanging up the phone right after you say it.
What's that?
Hanging up the phone right after you say it. That's what you do. You call them and you tell them that, and then you say, "And I think you're an asshole," and you hang up. That's how you do that.
Yeah, definitely. That sounds. It's efficient, is it not?
It is. It covers all. That puts you right back in that circle. Well, you know what that actually translates into, and this is a question, maybe the question I've heard the most. Do I wait for him to text me, or do I text him?
Oh, I'm not good at this because I don't know the rules and don't play by them well.
Right. Exactly.
No chill. I'm like, I don't know, radical honesty. Do you want to text them? Then do it. Like,
that's me.
And so I think, honestly, I would then again say, like, observe my behavior, like acknowledge that you do want to text. And so go, what is it that I'm looking for? So I avoided vulnerability, and now I'm looking to stabilize myself by reaching out. Like, I have this desire to reach out now, and I'm going, oops, it sounds like I'm like immediately blocking myself from the thing that I actually want because I'm afraid of it. And, it's important and it's big to me. And so I won't let someone see that space inside of me, but then I also want someone to see that space inside of me. So there's this vacillation where we kind of keep ourselves in the dark and kind of confused about our behavior because we don't really play out the things that we're feeling,
And what you just said was so brilliant. I think 30 clients just canceled their appointments with me because they were like, oh, she said it, we don't need Karen. That is, that I always say you have to be able to say that and walk away you have to be able to say what you really want to say and then walk away without any attachment to the outcome. If that's how you feel, if you miss this person, I told someone this the other day, text them, I miss you, turn off the phone and go to sleep, which is not easy, but you can't sit there and wait for that. But it is that, love is the worst. Love is the worst. That sounded like I blocked myself right there, didn't it?
No, love is tricky. I think, that's the thing. I think shadow work is all about just exploring everything that comes up. So if you feel like love is the worst, I'd say, where's love harming you? Are there things that you could be doing or boundaries that you could set that would minimize potential harm and also act as like a sort of like a screening process to who gets into those vulnerable spaces. I would say so much of shadow work is just a willingness to observe what it is that you're actually feeling with a level of honesty so that you can then identify it and care for it. And once you learn from it, you get to do that release with gratitude and let it turn into something else,
Yeah, I love that because there is, I think that is the place where we are all the most unsafe, which is loving someone else. And when we see, I remember when I was a little kid, not that little, but I was an adult and I was in the stage of trying to find love or looking for it, which has really been the weakness. And don't anyone feel bad for me, but this has been the weak part of my life. I think I've mastered many other areas, and this one I just can't seem to get right now. But I remember Joan Collins had been married 15 times or some crazy number. And she looked right in the camera and she said, and I loved all of them. And I thought, how wonderful would that be to love all those people,
Right. Yeah. No, I think honestly it's so beautiful, and it goes against kind of the cultural norm of stick with one thing, even if you're unhappy. And I think it really acknowledges, right, the desire to just love and to love without
codependence.
shame that something ended.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
See, that is another thing. Oh my God, we could make this podcast 5 hours long. Shame. When we come back, we're going to talk about shame, and we're also going to talk about your services and what you do and who you can help, who's listening that might have all these things going on at once. Okay.
Sure.
You know, that's me. All right. Hold on. We'll be right back, folks. Hey, I'm here with my friend Ari that hosts, or I want to say takes care of all my Zoom events, my comedy shows, my classes. Ari, tell everybody what type of Zoom events you are great at hosting.
Yeah, so I really take care of any kind of Zoom event, from a virtual camp to lecture series, cooking classes, celebrations like weddings or bar and bat mitzvahs, really anything.
And to me, it just looks like you make my life easier. I just have to click on and talk, which is beautiful. Tell everybody, what are you doing behind the scenes that helps me so much?
Yeah, so I'm taking care of all of the settings, like muting and spotlighting people, making breakout rooms, recording the meeting, really just all of the tech pieces you might think of or not think of. I'm taking care of that.
That is so helpful. And it really is the difference between something looking amateurish and something looking really professional and wanting people to come back to your meeting again. So tell everybody where they can find you.
Yes, so you're welcome to email me at wharton.ari@gmail.com. That's WHARTON.ARI@gmail.com. And you're welcome to email me with any questions and find out how we can work together.
And your rates are so reasonable, it's crazy. So everybody, wharton.ari@gmail. I'm going to try and have it in the show notes. If you can't find her or you don't know how to rewind the podcast, just email. I'll get you connected. Thanks, Ari.
Thanks, Karen.
Okay, I feel like this is such an informative podcast that people are like going, get to shame. Like who's rooting for shame? We are. Shame is huge. And I feel like shame is sometimes underlying and we don't know it. It's the most hidden emotion possibly. That's my theory.
Most hidden. I think shame is one of those things that shows up in shadow when, like when you're in the shower and you're thinking about that ridiculous thing you did like in third grade and it can just immediately crawl back. Like the feeling is instantaneous. You're back in that moment.
I live that every day, like crazy amounts every day. And I seriously would not have called that shame. I just would call that hating myself because I relive my stupid moments so much. It's crazy.
Well, I would just say that shame is like that rear view mirror, the same way that like we utilize retrograde energy and stuff to look backwards. I would say that shame as a teacher that comes forward and saying there's a part of you that is unhealed here, because look how quickly we can pull up that emotional response to something that could have been genuinely decades ago, and going, what is it that we have to look that we haven't maybe grabbed from this? Where have we not offered ourselves a different narrative about like being allowed to be ignorant or wrong, or the right to not know everything, or the right to make mistakes? Where have we not offered ourselves that healing? And so I think shame's one of those things where again, I see all of these like dark emotional experiences and traumas as teachers. And so I go, what is it that shame's trying to teach you that's unhealed in the past?
Everything. I don't know if I can process that question this fast. I mean, it all kind of does go back to childhood stuff. And, my dad used to call me the stupid one, and it's how he introduced my sister, the smart one and the stupid one. I don't know. That's an interesting question. Repeat it again for me.
So shame's offering you that look backward and saying, what have I not offered myself healing? what's still existing in a way that is causing me harm when I think about it.
Oh, I know what this is. Because it's so weird. So I'm writing a whole bit about it. I'm writing a whole part of a show about it. It's forgiveness. There was no forgiveness for mistakes. There was only punishment.
Yes. I mean, if you're expecting your mistakes to end in punishment rather than just allowing them to be lessons and opportunities to learn something, then the idea of trying, again, that's where we tie back into that perfectionism and control is if I can limit the amount of mistakes I make, then potentially I'll be good and potentially I'll be safe. And that's where we go, where are these narratives fitting like clothes that have gotten too small, where this doesn't, again, we release in gratitude, like has shame held space for me to examine these old wounds so that they can actually be healed. Shame has been that bag, for those things that are just waiting for our attention. And so I go, oh, thank you, shame, for pulling this to the surface because I need to acknowledge something here still.
Yes, I think I know there was an enormous change in my life when I started playing basketball as a little kid, because my dad was a great basketball player and he didn't like women or children, so it was kind of a tough childhood. Which is exactly the men I find myself with. Don't like either of those either. But
well, that's why I'm like, oh, what are we repeating that we need to heal?
Right, exactly. And I remember I had a lot of athletic ability, and it's sort of out of the gate, I kind of looked like a star when I didn't know how to play. And my first game with others, it was just hard, and he screamed at me for days about how badly I played. And I was like, I was a little kid. I didn't even think I knew the rules. So at that point, mistakes were just punished. So I think that's why I relive and just punish.
Well, and I would even explore that energetic tie between the two of you and going, so what was it that came up for him that required his daughter, who's just learning something, to be so proficient at it? What is he seeing in you that he feels is a direct reflection back of his capability or value and things like that? And that's where I go, let's explore this energetic tie. Do you wish to continue this? Do you wish to be a part of this person's healing? Do you want to be that valuable part of your dad for him? And going, if not, let's release it and let him sort out how he defines value outside of you. Because isn't that a kindness to give people back the consequences of their actions or their own pain so that they can actually heal it in their own time rather than waiting on us,
Well, my dad has a little dementia, so I don't know if we'll get with that.
Yeah, sure. No, but for you on your side, you get to let yourself go and go, right. Oh, wait, I didn't have to be this person for him. I'm just allowed to let the mistakes that I made just be learning experiences and allow space for me to not be perfect and proficient, and I can be ignorant and honestly have lack in areas and just go, do I even want to learn this?
It's the funniest thing, and this is exactly how comedians are, is like there's this part of me that has that shadow side, and then there's this part that where you want to hide it, but then there's this part that wants to put it out so far, almost like if everyone sees it, I won't have to deal with it, because this is one of the funniest things. I somehow ended up on my Apple podcasts. My podcast came up and I clicked on it, and I was flipping through. I was looking for an episode and I found the reviews, which you never read reviews or comments. You should never do that. And I started, and some of the bad reviews, I literally was like, you should read these on the air. And I thought, at first I kind of thought, some of them were funny. Someone thought I was deteriorating, and I don't know what that means. Unless they thought I was in Back to the Future, and if my parents didn't kiss, I was going to deteriorate from the picture. But it was almost like it's this gut reaction, like make sure everyone sees your shame. It was just an interesting thought.
You know, that's so interesting. I'm like thinking, so one of two things. Are we like making ourselves so seen that we think nobody can get us here because
Yes.
we're like experiencing some level of like radical vulnerability that doesn't actually allow us to address the feelings of vulnerability? Do you know what I mean?
You're just brilliant, because it's also, and this especially in cancel culture, I think comedians were doing this before. I'll never forget, I loved this story about Roseanne. When she was famous, someone found out she was in a mental hospital, and they said, "You were in a mental hospital." And she looked at him, she goes, "Yeah, what's your problem with it?" And she took all the air out of it. Like, "I don't have a problem with it. Tell everyone." And I think that is, but I like that other, what you said, like vulnerable, radical vulnerability. Like, you can't get me if I get me. You can't get me if I get me first.
Absolutely. Yes. And I guess the thing that I would say is I don't even have an issue with someone kind of exploring their vulnerability in that way, but I would just say, make sure that on the other side of that, at the end of the day, when it's not in front of people, you're meeting that need, you know?
Yeah, I don't know that that's happening yet, but this is a good start. Oh my God. All right. So let's move a little bit to how you, well, and this is really interesting because I want to look at a healing before we get into how you help people feel.
Sure.
I had the most I know about this, because this is where everything gets tricky, is because I like things that go A, B, C, D, and then it's done. And if you didn't get C, go back to B. Like, I like it in a list. And there's this couple that are fantastic. They're called Lone Wolf or something, and they put out a shadow side workbook, and it was only like $15, so it wasn't any loss. But it got too basic for me, because I was like, okay, I got this. I got make a list of when you feel bad. Blah, 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 blah. It wasn't a bad idea, and I didn't make it to the end, so it may have been great. But I got halfway through, and then my eye pencil didn't work, so I gave up. I figured that was a sign from the universe. How do you? What is your? Because you're kind of saying let things go. Do you have like a suggestion for how people let this go when they identify it?
So I think once you've identified what it is that you're experiencing, I would challenge the person to care for it. So one of the things that I would say is, how can we care for, our anger, our shame, our pain, destruction, whatever that is, that's found in our shadow, if we don't really understand the purpose of those things? So what I would say is, if you've made your lists and you've observed things and you say, you know what, things falling apart and changing really overwhelm me. How can I care for destruction energy? How can I care for death energy? What I would do is say, well, what do those things do? What purpose do they serve? And then what is it that they're trying to teach me personally? So if I can care for that energy and care for myself in the way that I interact with it, then I learn from it. And that's when it's pretty easy to release, because you've gained what it was that it was there to teach. Do you know what I mean? There's nothing more to learn, so it freely releases.
Okay, because actually what you said kind of really nailed it with me, because I'm getting rid of all my stuff. Okay. I'm just moving with what fits in my car. I keep saying that like it's a badge of honor. I don't know why. But I
think it's great.
I think because it's scary to me at 56 to do that. And two big things. There was a couch and a futon that I couldn't carry myself, which, by the way, was like, it took everything I had to ask this neighbor to help me. And he's the nicest man in the world. And I forced him to take $20, even though he didn't want to. But it was like, because I hate being needy. I hate needing help. But I like letting go of all this stuff was so overwhelming. And I was like, thank you, futon, for all the nights of sleep I had. And thank you for this chair where I used to do my readings. But it was so it was so overwhelming to let go of this stuff that then maybe I would say, and it's just a couch, it's just a futon. So I would have to say, so I would address the idea of letting go, correct?
Yeah, I think I would say, is there a fear that like where you're going next or what's coming won't hold those things for you? Was the chair and the futon genuinely a place of safety and security for you? And is there an anxiety about potentially not having those situations in your new space without the chair and the futon? You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I don't think that's crazy. I think that that's we have emotional attachments to spaces and objects that give us that sense of security. So to release it, I think would be, to acknowledge the fear of losing it. And will I be able to rebuild that?
You know, have you ever had to talk someone out of their futon like this? Or is that, you know, what's so funny? This is really literally talk about self-fulfilling prophecy. I always slept on a futon because I always thought, I'm not going to buy a bed. The minute I buy a bed, someone is going to ask me to marry them, and then we're going to have 2 beds, and I can't deal with that. That's literally like half joke, half real. So a couple months ago, I decided, you're an adult, get yourself a bed. I got myself a bed. Now it's 6 months later. I'm trying to get rid of the bed. Like I was like,
oh my gosh, that makes the futon. Like I love the futon for you. I'm like, this futon is holding space for like the dream of partnering with someone. And I promise to stay to hold myself in this mode of waiting and anticipation that I don't have to figure out what to do with 2 mattresses. Like that futon is holding a lot of dreams and future thinking for you. And so the idea of letting go of it is, in a sense, letting go of part of that narrative that it sounds like was, in like processing,
I bet now they just took away the futon today. And I bet the futon was like, thank God, I am so tired holding all that expectation.
I love it. And isn't that kind of the point that like in this release, we acknowledge what it is that's, important to us or what it is that we're trying to protect and what we want. And then we do, there is energy spent in holding. And so it's a good practice to say, what is it that I'm holding? Do I want to hold this anymore?
Oh, that's funny. It just went today. And literally, I like the bed. I finally did find someone to take the bed before I go. But I would come out in the living room where I moved the futon and I'd lay down in it and I go, this is so comfortable. Why did I not? This is so comfortable here. Why did I get the bed and not this? All right. So this was fantastic. So tell everyone, we did not even get into how you got into doing what you do. So we will have to have you back. Tell everyone when they call you, do you give readings or healings or tell everybody your whole thing?
Great. So I typically, and kind of my jumping off point into this work was through Reiki, and in doing some of that, I started seeing funny things and seeing programming and these ties and things like that. And so that kind of led a little bit more into the shamanic side of healing. So if somebody were to call me, what that would look like is I have 1 hour sessions that are kind of just a reset. So let's say, you're off and you don't need to dissect the how and the why behind everything. You're like, just put me back in a good space. So that's what that 1 hour session would kind of be. And then I have 2 hour sessions that are, I think on my website, they're called like energy healing and energy clearing or something like that.
Yes. Energy. You're calling them energy clearing and healing with Reiki. So they're more stuff.
There you go. I'm glad you know that answer. So what that is if there is a part of your shadow that is repetitively coming forward, or a block or some sense of lack or trauma that you're like, I just need someone to help me process this. What that looks like is we'll go in and we can do this in person or at a distance. But I'll call in my guides and your guides will call in anyone that's necessary to the session, and we will explore energetic ties. We'll look at where things are stored potentially in that energy body and physical body, because where it's sitting matters, and it helps us kind of define why we're holding it in the way that we are. And then honestly, what I tell people is, sure, I see things, but the reason I really like using that Reiki base is because Reiki doesn't go against a person's will. And I kind of feel the same way, where I might think you should let go of something, but it's not my business. I don't know if you've learned everything that there is to learn from it. And so I partner with my clients to say, hey, I'm seeing this. Are you ready to let go of that? Or how do we want to deal with it? Do we want to better understand it before we release it? And so we kind of come up with a game plan together based on what they're experiencing and what I see. And then we address it the way that they want to, because healing is so layered that if I were to go in and, yank out something that's really integrated into that security system and not leave you with anything to put in its place, that's just overwhelming and unnecessary. So a lot of it is kind of a teamwork collaboration. And then I do dream stuff, and I do tarot and incorporate all of those things. But right now, those are the two things I'm doing. I am trying to write. If I say it here, then I'll have to make it happen.
That's it. I'm going to hold you to it, or I'm going to shame you.
Yeah, exactly. I am trying to write a course on doing some of this on your own. Nice. Especially to create a price point where people can do some of this work if you can't afford working with a healer regularly. And I think everybody's capable of doing this if you can learn how to take an honest look at what comes up. So it's in the works.
A great idea, but your prices are very, very, very reasonable.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Alex, thank you so much. So people can find you at embracingwild.com. And they can find you at Instagram, embracing_wild.
Exactly.
I am so afraid of the underscore because I know that's who duplicated my account, and then I lost my mind. That was another place I had much shame. So.
I reported those for you.
Thank you. Thank you. People were so kind. By the way, I don't think I've even said thank you to all the people that were so kind that reported that. And I know friends that still can't get it down. And I don't know if it was that or if it was that I did start harassing the CEO.
Well, you were threatening to leave, and I thought, no, we need Karen on Instagram.
Well, thank you. If they'll give me the little blue check, which I have to wait a month to do that, then I'll go, because right now I'm private, and I feel bad about that. But you were just fantastic. I loved this podcast. Embracingwild.com, Alex Glynn. And Alex, please come back again, and we'll talk about more embarrassing and shameful things.
Anytime you want me, you have me. It's my pleasure. I appreciate the opportunity to hang out with you.
Oh, this was fantastic. All right, everybody, thanks. Go read the funny bad reviews I got on iTunes, and maybe leave me a good one. And thanks to Mike at Uno Rising Media. Hello to everybody in Utica. I think I'm there. Everybody have a great day. Thanks.